Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan and welcome back to Primetime Crisis. Today I'm talking about the third episode of Arrow for this season. It is Season 5, Episode 3, A Matter of Trust. And I didn't like this episode nearly as well as last week. I don't think it got nearly as much done. I think there's even some kind of weird contradictory stuff. I didn't entirely buy Oliver's character arc this time, and certainly not as well as I did last week, and overall it just wasn't as dense. My main issue with where we're at right now is I think the implications of Oliver running the city both in front of and behind the public eye is really disturbing, and I don't think the show realizes just how disturbing all of this is. He has kind of become this, like, oppressive force. He's kind of the dictator of Star City right now. I don't think he knows it, I don't think the show knows it, and the implications of his leading a team right now, being a mentor, as if we're 5 seasons in and now he's more responsible and he's more of a superhero, and so now it's time for him to kind of pass the torch to some other people. That's, I think, the way it's kind of trying to play it. I mean, certainly part of it is also because he's lost some of his team members and he's trying to replace them. That's really how this ought to be playing, right? Is that Oliver has learned a lot, he's grown a lot as a superhero and as a person, and he's got these things to teach these young kids. It's not working that way. I wish, and that's maybe somewhat of the idea, and then the rest of it is just, you know, trying to create some broody, angsty drama, like always. Oh, I miss my team, but I have to move on, and so I've got these other kids that I'm teaching. But he's still calling himself Green Arrow. We're still acting like he's more of a hero than he was before, even though he's more okay with killing people again all of a sudden. I just feel like the implications of all this are really messed up, and so we'll talk about that as we move along. So, the first thing I want to talk about is something, before I really dig my teeth into this episode, is something I meant to bring up last video, which is the Casey Jones stuff. I think I thought it was really funny, and not in a good way. I was laughing at it. I didn't like that we did this. That at the beginning of the first episode, the very first thing we do in the teaser before we even get to the title card is have Oliver Queen fight a guy wearing a hockey mask like Casey Jones. Really? We got to do that? Okay. Everybody, at least that saw that movie or saw commercials for that movie, knows that you're doing a Ninja Turtles reference, that Casey Jones was played by Steve Amell. That wink wink nod nod to the audience is irritating, and it's also of course, dating this material, but, you know, we tend to do that. And then this episode, he comes right out and says he thinks the hockey mask is cool. Okay, we get it. Stephen Amell played Casey Jones. And I don't really know why we're doing that when that movie wasn't a success and that franchise seems to be tanked, and nobody was talking about his performance. I mean, like, if that was heralded as, like, the definitive Casey Jones, or everybody was talking about how cool he was in that movie, I could maybe kind of see it, but it's not like that's the other role he's gonna most be known for. He was playing Oliver Queen, playing Casey Jones, and it's hilarious that we are still doing that. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Wild Dog. The basic idea behind this episode is Wild Dog is a wild card. That's why I had kind of a Freudian slip there. And Oliver has to learn to trust him more, even though he's a complete loose cannon. So he has some information, he thinks. He's pretty sure he knows where the bad guys are that they're after. And because he knows the streets of a certain area of the city better than Oliver Queen does. And it becomes kind of an ego thing where Oliver doesn't want to listen to him, and I have a tough time buying this. Oliver's like, no, you don't know for sure? The guy's like, I think it's that they're here. And he's like, oh, you don't know for sure? Well, we're not even going to look into it. And I didn't buy that. I feel like that's a lead. You would check into it, and he doesn't do that. So he's kind of made into an idiot, and Wild Dog takes, I think, Evelyn with him to go stake these people out, and because he's such a loose cannon, he brings not only his hockey mask, but also some guns, and decides that he's going to solve this problem all on his own and prove to Oliver Queen that he deserves to be out in the field. And so one thing leads to another, and he ends up shooting up a bunch of these guys. I don't know if any of them actually dies. We don't talk about that. We just talk about his initially ostensibly killing the leader guy, who ends up dropping into your obligatory vat of chemicals and turns into a supervillain with powers, which is amusing because we haven't really had a lot of people in these shows that get their powers that way, through some kind of a freak accident. That doesn't have anything to do with our standard way excuse for giving superpowers, like the particle accelerator. But there are some examples, and this is one of them. And so at first, he's, of course, berated, mostly just because he went there. They're not even, the team isn't even that upset with him for, it looks like, murdering someone. He's like, Oliver, you can't pretend like you don't mind one more mob boss being taken off the table. And that really isn't the problem Oliver has with it. He just doesn't like that these guys aren't following orders, and there's not really any discussion of him being kicked off the team. He's basically like, my way or the highway. If you don't play by my rules, you're not going to be here. But they continue to talk about him like if he behaves himself, he'll be able to stay on the team. And I couldn't believe that. This guy would run off half-cocked like this and kill someone. Never mind the fact that the guy comes back as a supervillain. That doesn't even end up being really the reason that Wild Dog is allowed to go out on the field later on. I think that still probably would have happened. It's just that Oliver really doesn't mind murdering the bad guys now. All of this, of course, could have been avoided if Oliver simply trained this team like you would train an army. And he keeps talking about them like an army. Why don't we just have basic training? You learn the things you need to learn before you go out in the field. And then after a certain number of weeks, when he thinks you're ready, you go out in the field. If you're not okay with that, he doesn't let you be part of the team. That's it. And you go back out on the street, and if he doesn't like what you're doing, he takes you down as the Arrow, or as Green Arrow. So, but that's not what we're doing, and so it's kind of preposterous. It's just, we've got to force the drama, and we've got to have cool big action scenes that I guess have more characters in them than, or more, good guy characters than Oliver Queen, and so we're making up excuses to have these people go out in the field prematurely. This is not ultimately about trust so much as it is about paying attention to intel and stuff. Because Felicity says, none of this would have happened if you just trusted your teammates. They haven't done anything to deserve his trust yet. They haven't earned that yet, and that seems really obvious to me, that he can't, just because he picked them and put them on his team, doesn't mean that he should trust them to have his back or save his life or anything really. And really, he should just be keeping his eyes and ears open and being smart. That's more what this is about. And so, anyway, that theme ends up being the really obvious way that all the subplots are tied in together this week. And I have to say that this season so far, we've been telling a story a little bit less through abstractions and a little bit more through the action. And when I say action, I don't mean kicking and punching, I mean the stuff that's happening in the show, as opposed to having people just standing around telling us what we're supposed to take from scenes and moving the story forward from that. We're actually doing more of, what real stories do, which is having making those ideas clear through stuff happening on screen, and not just, seeing the writers trying to, kind of spin their wheels and figure out what the point is of the thing they're writing on the page. And so I'm glad that we're doing that. Unfortunately, it is too heavy-handed and kind of on the nose a lot of the time. We have kind of, 4 different things going on that are all kind of about the same thing, sort of. We've got that deal with Oliver having to learn how to appreciate, or how to trust his teammates, and then we have our standard paralleling flashback that's the same thing that I think is kind of contradictory to last week, where the whole idea was in the Russian Bratva mafia, Oliver has to learn that he needs other people, but that he can't trust them, and he has to use them. And so he uses them to help him to be able to get to the bell, and then all of his other teammates are killed, and the lesson is supposed to be, you don't need them anymore, you can't trust anyone but yourself. And then this week, it's he has to stand with his back to his teammates, basically, the other people that are in the mob with him, and let them scar him across the back and know that he won't be stabbed in the back. I don't know if I'm missing something. I don't know if I just don't understand this way of thinking, what this Russian mob is. I'm not going to pretend like I know anything about any sort of mafia beyond what I've seen in movies, and certainly not a Russian version. But I don't really understand that. But anyway, so that, and once again, we're still having things that happened exactly 5 years ago to about the day, informing what's going on now, and not just in, and often not just in thematic ways. This time, I guess it is. But anyway, so you've got those two things, and then you have Diggle, who is kind of going insane, but once again, I don't know if the show knows that he's going insane. Where he's been framed by that general from last week, now he's in prison, and he feels like he deserves to be there, not because, of course, of the things that the American government thinks that he's done against them, but because of what he did to his brother last season, which I thought was completely out of character, totally out of left field. I didn't buy that he did that. I'm glad that there are consequences and that we're dealing with it, but Diggle is totally out there now, and a character that I don't really understand. And again, I thought he was way too naive last episode with his talk about compartmentalization and letting the people above you deal with the ethics of a situation. He's seen too many dirty people in the government to think like that. But anyway, so he sees Floyd Lawton, and Lawton is in prison with him, and then it turns out that he's just a figment of his imagination, which I both like and don't like. On the one hand, I like that we're not actually trying to say that he survived his death, because there's no way. And so I really appreciate that he's actually dead. That reveal was a little bit surprising, but again, not entirely in a good way. The problem is, nothing is beneath this show. And even though it's improved a little bit this season, I still don't trust it, which is somewhat ironic given this episode in the title. I don't trust it. And so when Lawton's coming in and explaining, and as much of a weird coincidence as it would be to put those two together, unless someone did it on purpose because they were sadistic and they knew about Diggle's past with Deadshot. You know, I could kind of see it, but that doesn't seem to be what's going on. So, I wouldn't even put that past the show, that they would just happen to both wind up in a cell together. And then, I don't think it's beneath the show for him to explain his surviving the way he does, and for that to actually be the thing, just retroactively, we wanted to use him again, and we're past Suicide Squad now, so for whatever reason, maybe we're allowed to do Suicide Squad things again, if there are no plans for an immediate sequel or something. That's where my mind was going. And then when it turns out toward the end that he's actually not really in the cell, I was like, oh, that's good. And then I thought, well, no, wait a minute, this turns into the three ghost problem again, right? As much as I liked that episode, and I've talked about this before, my whole problem with that was always, if you are hallucinating people and you're not on drugs, you have to be kind of mentally unstable, or something has gone wrong. I've seen a lot of TV shows that have handled this in smarter ways, where there's an episode of Angel in season 4 where, not to get too far into this, because it's a complicated deal in the middle of that season, but you got Wesley, who is having to who's having to behead the body of Lila Morgan, who he had been sleeping with, and she's this bad guy who worked for Wolfram & Hart, but they had a fling and he cared about her, and now he's going to have to lob her head off. And he starts kind of hallucinating her talking to him. But it isn't like he doesn't know that she's not actually there talking to him and that she's not a figment of his imagination. That's the narrative dramatizing what's going on in his head for you. So that's a representation. And we very often in the CW shows do this kind of thing, and I think Smallville did it some too, much more literally, and it makes our characters seem like insane people because no one actually does this unless something is kind of wrong with them. Now, I would be totally fine with Diggle kind of going off the deep end because of all of these things that he's done and that have happened to him, but I kind of don't think that's what's going on. Again, I don't trust the show. But anyway, the way this links into the theme for this episode is taking personal responsibility for your past mistakes, and that's what a leader does. So those are the two big things. First, it's trusting your team, and then it's, as a leader, taking responsibility for what people on your team do. And I guess the Diggle one is the subplot is the furthest away from this, because with him, it's not about teamwork, it's just about himself and about, other people involved with his brother's alleged murder and then his being alive and his actually killing him. But it's connected a little bit because of his, feeling the need to take responsibility for that. And, of course, what he did was, really was kind of wrong. And not even kind of, I mean, it was wrong. He didn't kill his brother in self-defense. And it's interesting that we're doing that, but the show does not seem to understand, again, the implications of the killing that Oliver has done so far this season and seems perfectly fine with doing down the road. So that's a thing. And then the other subplot has to do with Thea, making the mistake of telling a reporter that she's been calling a lot of the shots with Oliver's mayoral duties. And so she chose Lance to be his deputy mayor behind his back, and she kind of lets this reporter know about that, and the reporter blasts it all over the news, and all of a sudden Oliver looks like an idiot, and she decides to take responsibility for her actions and tenders her resignation, which I thought was really stand up and grown up of her, and I thought what she did was kind of stupid, but I have overall kind of liked Thea this season, and I kind of think she's going to end up being the mayor, which is funny because then you'll end up with all these people who have queens who've at least run, if not end up becoming mayor. So anyway, by the end, and this was the one scene I really kind of liked, by the end, Oliver does this press conference, and this is how the subplots for Oliver converge, where he says a leader is responsible for the actions of his subordinates. And so, yes, Thea decided who the deputy mayor was going to be without me, but I support it because I trust my team members. And I thought that was really smart. I thought that was ultimately a really good way to get the media off his back and to make that whole group not look stupid. And, granted, it's a questionable choice with Lance, especially when you look at what he looks like in that scene. Everybody knows what has happened with him. Maybe they don't know that he's an alcoholic, but certainly that he's not on the force anymore. And so that's going to be questionable to people, certainly, and probably, his mental stability and stuff. But I like the way he, takes the reins of that. And the problem with it, again, though, is that makes sense with him and Thea because she's a person who has earned his trust, and that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit more about the implications of what exactly Oliver is doing right now. He has decided that it is sometimes necessary to kill again, and he's certainly not the hero that we were playing him up to be before, I don't think. I can't decide where I stand with this idea, with this particular idea with the show right now. because the person who, besides Diggle, has most kind of stood in as Oliver's conscience has been Felicity. And she's totally fine with the fact that he's killing. And as I talked about last episode, that really bugs me. It bugged me even more this episode. We still kind of have that going on. We have this, not training exercise, but this observation thing at the beginning of the episode, where the team is watching Oliver interrogate someone, and he knows they're watching, and the point of this is to teach them how to handle this out in the field. And it's just mortifying. The idea is, do whatever you have to do to a person short of killing them, and don't bluff, and if you have to kill them, maybe that's okay. That really is what it feels like they're saying. And is, like, are there going to be consequences to this later? And even if there are, we're really bouncing this back and forth where, at the point where Oliver finally decides killing is bad again, we've done this dance so many times. A, I'm sick of it, and B, I don't trust that he won't just go right back again. Even if this was the last season, and the very last episode is Oliver learning to be altruistic again, learning that the ends do not justify the means, and that he should put regard for life and doing the right thing above everything else. Even if that were what the series ended on, because he switches back like a light switch, I would not buy it, and so that's obnoxious. But it's even worse because right now it feels like the show itself is kind of saying the ends justifies the means, and that it's okay. So he takes this guy, and it's kind of an amusing interrogation technique where he's on sort of a zip line, and he keeps like coming back at Oliver, and then Oliver like punches him or pushes him, and he keeps going back and forth on the zip line, and he's harassing him for information, and finally he says, "I'm not going to kill you, but I can't promise you'll walk after this." What? And this just does not feel like a situation where this is remotely necessary. It's really contrived. He drops him from a really high place, and it's hard to tell just how high it is. I think we cut to the series logo just as this is going on, and we hear him scream before he hits. So I don't know how many feet or how many stories it is, but he can't be sure that fall won't kill him, I don't think. And again, importantly, he's these kids' role model, and they are kids, most of them. They're like, I don't know if any of them are straight up teenagers, but some of them look like they're between the 18 and 22 place, and they're really young, and they're really impressionable, and I just kind of can't believe that this show has gone to this place, and that I'm not sure I'm not sure what it's saying with it. It bugs me. My son Jason usually watches the show with me, and I'm kind of on the fence about letting him continue to watch it right now, just because Oliver is such a terrible role model. That's not to say he hasn't always been, but boy, it's really bothering me right now. So he's got that, and then we should talk a little bit, because I didn't bring this up last time, about the one kill. I think this is the only kill he's had so far this season, and why he did it. So in the first episode, there's a thug that he kills, and he says later it's because he learned with Damien Dark that you can't leave these people alive, or you'll be responsible for all the horrible things they do afterwards. That it's better to kill them than it is to let them get back out on the street. But that's not why he killed the guy he killed. It was because he saw his face, and he didn't want him to, and I don't know why he thought this would happen, but he didn't want, I don't even think he saw his, I'm confused as to what exactly it was, and I've only watched that episode once, but basically, it was, he didn't want the guy to put two and two together and figure out that he was the mayor. And so, at least I think that's what it was, and so he kills him. And at this point, Oliver is not any better than the villains that he fights against, and he's starting to look like a despot, and that's the implications are mortifying. He's like literally ruling the city in two different places, and I'm not sure what makes him all that much better than Tobias Church or anybody else. What else should we talk about? Speaking of Tobias Church, he and Prometheus are not in this episode, and I kind of think we could have maybe, not knowing where they're going with that stuff, I kind of think that we could have maybe seeded a little bit more of that stuff here so that the episode wouldn't seem so padded, because even though we have 4 different subplots, if you include the flashbacks, it still feels a little bit spread out and decompressed. It didn't feel like there was enough going on here to me for a whole episode. But anyway, so they're not here at all. What else do I want to mention? I think that is pretty much it. I also question Oliver letting what's his face, Wild Dog run around with guns, and I guess Diggle had guns, but, he was a soldier, and he was careful about it, and I guess he somehow never killed people. I'm trying to remember if Diggle had guns. I think he did. We always played fast and loose with this killing people idea, even when we were saying we're not going out to kill people. And that always seemed to be sort of the line where, like, if you're a soldier, it's okay, even if you're fighting with the Green Arrow. Anyway, that's about all I've got to say. Right now, the way the show is paced and the way it's more deliberately plotted, I think is a lot better. Oh, I didn't mention anything about Curtis. I should just say that, once again, I really don't like Oliver letting Curtis on this team, and I don't know why Curtis wants so badly to go out on the field. Like, I think it'd be really cool, and this is not where they're going to go, I don't think. I think it'd be really cool if Curtis was in over his head and this feels like a fun thing to do, and then he sees some stuff and decides that it's just too much for him. This is a family man. This is a guy who does not have the stomach for this, and are we going to harden him more? What exactly are we going to do with him? Right now, he's just another Felicity, and people have said that he just seems like a male version of Felicity. I think they've reeled her in some so that he can be more obnoxious, and he irritated me a lot in this episode. It just seemed like every time he was talking, he was being kind of obnoxious, and like, we already have Felicity, we don't also need him, and so we're doing this just because, well, he's Mr. Terrific, and so he's supposed to put on a costume. I thought the whole Mr. Terrific coming from an old wrestler that he liked was kind of lame. I thought it was kind of weird that he had a T mask before he's decided to call himself that. None of that really worked for me, but I don't like that he's on this team, and I also think that, just like Felicity, he seems too pacifistic to be okay with what Oliver is doing, and they should both be kind of scheming, I think, to take Oliver down. What Oliver's doing is scary and wrong, and someone needs to be telling him this that's not Thea. And Thea seems to be weirdly compartmentalizing this, where she's like, well, as long as I don't have to be involved with it, I can just look at you as the mayor and not as the vigilante, and it's okay. She shouldn't be okay with this either. It's not like Oliver's following rule of law, and he is the mayor, which is all about rule of law. I'm bugged by where we're going with all of that. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, folks. Sure appreciate it. Leave your comments. Let me know what you thought about this episode. I'm Captain Logan, and I'll see you again next time.